we get the little things right, the big things will take care of themselves. And we just didn't take care of the little things, and we weren't as detailed, I should say, on top of our P's and Q's like we should have been, which is my responsibility. And look, I take 100% responsibility, and this is a tough football team. No matter what's said outside this building, and I told these guys that as well, look, we're a tough football team, not only physically but also mentally. I appreciate their effort. Just wasn't enough today.
That's Jerod Mayo. This is the Aftermath Podcast. The Patriots come up short 23-20 against the Seattle Seahawks. Really a good, competent, interesting football game. But the Patriots had every opportunity to get to 2-0 in the Jerod Mayo era, and they do not. Phil Perry, bring you in here right now. You said it in the postgame. I said it in the postgame. They're just not talented enough as a football team to overcome even the smallest mistakes. And these mistakes that were made today were significant, weren't they?
They were. They can't survive those. You can't survive a blocked field goal. You can't survive a 56-yard touchdown for no good reason. Those are things that tend to happen. They do. It's just a fact of life in the NFL. I mean, the blown coverage that leads to the DK Metcalf score is something that Kyle Duggar took the responsibility for after the fact. He's one of your best players. Mm-hmm. He screwed up.
Yep.
You can't survive it. Not this team and not the way they're built.
Yeah, this comes down to talent too, I think. They can't protect on the offensive line, which means that your wide receivers, who are not very talented right now and not quick at uncovering, they don't have enough time to get open. So with the personnel you have, you're basically working at 90% capacity. Jacoby Brissett, statistically, I think it was 15 for 22 for whatever it was. I got the game book here. But the bottom line is, numbers-wise, uninspiring. But to get to the point that he did, he had to navigate sloppy pockets, create on the run, take a week's worth of, again, physical abuse that is as good as anybody in the NFL is going to take, just to give yourself a chance to win the football game. So this, to me, again, comes down to talent, doesn't it, Phil?
It does. I mean, to your point about Jacoby Brissett, I tweeted during the game, Jacoby Brissett, ... playmaker? Because they had a drive. That's just not who he is. But they had a drive where their two longest completions, this was sorry, I'm trying to pull it up now. But it led to the Jalen Polk touchdown. They had a 12-yard gain on first down. That was a scramble drill find for Hunter Henry, little dump off, catch and run, 12 yards. And they had a 17-yard third down conversion, also to Hunter Henry, also a scramble drill situation.
Yep.
That's not how you want to live if you have Jacoby Brissett as your quarterback. I mean, he has done well. There's been a little bit of magic to Jacoby Brissett's game. Give him all the credit in the world. But he's still taking massive shots on occasion, Tom. And the passing game is still not efficient. 5.5 yards per attempt. And if you factor in the yardage lost to sacks, it was like 4.2. That's not NFL caliber.
It's not.
So I don't know how you fix it.
And I would say this, if Drake May was out there right now, they would be heavy in the process of regressing all of his development because it's too much of a jailbreak. He would have had oodles of either bad, ugly plays, walked into sacks, or turned the ball over. So he's in the right spot. But last week we talked about points given, points taken away. The Patriots took away points, and they were about plus 16, give or take, last week. Stopped a touchdown on the goal line. That was a save of 7. Broke up a would-be interception in the end zone by Hunter Henry. That saved them 3, so they're up 10. Joe Cardona popped a ball loose. They turned that into a field goal. They were plus 13. Today, they're minus 10. They had a field goal taken off the board because they couldn't get it. Marco Wilson, we can toss that in there too. Questionable call, but also that gift touchdown pass on the DK Metcalf. So again, last week we talked about, let's be realistic, some of the points that they got against Cincinnati were gravy. This week, they had the gravy taken right off their plate, and the Seahawks poured it down their own gullet. The key play, of course, was that completion downfield for 56 yards. Phil, you're in the locker room. What happened on that play according to the principals involved?
So Kyle Duggar said what happened was he changed the defensive call to a max blitz. Now, my guess is that means an all-out blitz or a cover zero blitz or, casino blitz is what Ted Johnson calls it every once in a based on something that he saw from the Seahawks offense. So they changed to something. He changed the call. Obviously, there's a communication breakdown between him and Christian Gonzalez. But what Duggar said was, essentially, when he changed the call to the max blitz, he indicated that he was expecting, because of the pressure called, the ball to come out of Geno Smith's hands very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe anticipating something that wasn't a surefire thing to actually happen. And so when he's expecting it to come out short and hot, it stays in his hands a beat longer. He took the responsibility. He needs to be the one getting deeper than the deepest in that situation, so that doesn't happen the way it happened. But it sounded like, man, we were expecting that ball to come out quickly and be thrown short, and obviously it wasn't. And so he took, accountability, check. But
one of the best players on the team.
Win games if you're the Patriots.
No, one of the best players on the team, and you're going to watch this back, Phil, when you do the breakdown on Monday with Ted Johnson. I'm sure you're going to discuss it. Duggar literally sits and looks into the backfield, stares at the quarterback, and we hear time and again on telecasts guys who play the quarterback position or the defensive back position as analysts speaking about the fact you can't get stuck with your eyes in the backfield. And that's what their high-profile safety, big-ticket safety, who is still a very good player, did. He sat down, and that play really costs him the game. There's no two ways about it. And I was very critical of Jamie Collins back in 2015 when he couldn't cover Owen Daniels twice in the AFC Championship game and allowed 2 touchdowns and had a great game otherwise. And this is Kyle Duggar. This is kind of on one of your best players. It's 2nd and 5. Seattle's got the ball in its own 44. What's the upside of a max blitz? It's not like you offensively are going to get that right back because you're not potent enough. So unless there's more information there, I would say that was a really horrendous idea.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say this. What he pointed out, and even though he's the one who made the call, he did make it sound like, based on how they had game planned, the game plan was for that call to be made in that situation when given that look. So it wasn't like he sort of went rogue and said, I feel like we got to do a max blitz here. It sounded like it was something that was talked about in the meetings leading up to the week, and that was the time to deploy it, apparently.
Yeah, that's a good detail. Like, you ever play in the backyard and you just decide you're going to blitz? No Mississippis, because you get one blitz every 4 downs, and you blitz.
For sure, of course.
Yeah, no. So they didn't go no Mississippis with nobody else understanding. What happened on the block field goal, Phil?
I talked to Austin Hooper for a few minutes in the locker room, and he was a little reluctant to get into the details because he hadn't even had a chance to really rewatch it, is what he said. But I'm looking at it now. He's the end man on the line of scrimmage. He did say they overloaded that side with Tariq Woolen and Julian Love. That's something that they have done in the past, he said. And it's something that they were expecting. Now, he also mentioned that when you're in real time faced with Tariq Woolen, who is long and bends well and runs a 4.2, as Hooper pointed out to me, your attention might go to that guy. And it looks like that's what happened. And this does happen to these players that are on the end of the line of scrimmage. They're sort of in a almost lose situation where you have to sort of take on 2, and you almost see them. Yep. They try to press both guys in the chest.
Yeah, it's called the Jesus block.
One hand. and you just get completely rolled over, right? But if you slow them down enough to get the kickoff, you've done your job. That's what he was going for. It looks like, watching the video back, he was more focused on Will, and that allowed Love, with a shorter path to the ball as the inside guy, to get in there and block the kick. I said, hey, are any rules, basic fundamental rules for you guys associated with, if you see an overload, hey, I'm always just going to make sure I get the inside guy, and then the outside guy is sort of like, if he gets there, he gets there. And he said, yeah, the rule is don't let them block the kick. And I said, okay. Oh, all right. That's even I can understand that as a football person.
Ted Johnson said, and this could be on the breakdown too. I bet it will be, because Ted was adamant after hearing you say that. That's got to be the inside guy. It's got to be the inside guy. So
I do wonder, Tom, is that the best choice? Like, we don't have to get into Jeremy Springer decisions here, but I'm surprised that he's the end of the line guy. I know Gronk, I think, has done that at times. Dietrich Wise has done that at times. These are big, powerful, long-armed individuals. Keon White is the end-of-the-line guy on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Austin Hooper is sort of a curious choice to me for that job. That's all.
Yeah. I mean, you do have to cover a lot of ground. You have to have a wingspan. Victor Wembanyama would be one of the best.
I would go with Dietrich Wise ain't out there, and I'm sort of wondering why. So
we're going to delve into that. It's a short week, but we'll find time for that. Meanwhile, wide receivers, Phil, listen to this. Geno Smith was 27 for 35 for 282 yards and a touchdown to his wideouts. Jacoby Brissett was 3 for 4 for 19 yards and a touchdown to his wideouts. My math says the difference in attempts and receptions is 24 for 31 for 263. Were there opportunities downfield for Patriots wide receivers to be featured? Was Polk open? Was Demario Douglas existing today? Was there anything that could have been done to change the way the ball was being distributed? Or is it a darn jailbreak and there's nothing you can do?
I think a lot of it is that last thing. I mean, when you're under pressure as often as you are, and we'll get the numbers here soon, but it's going to be hard to find guys down the field when you're, having to play like Doug Flutie back there as Jacoby Brissett and just squirming around and hoping guys don't hit you. I would also say the talent in the receiving core is obviously not where it needs to be. And I'm wondering if they make some changes here soon, Tom, because I've talked to people with the team who really like Kayshon Boutte. I know he wasn't in uniform today, but he doesn't play special teams. And so he's one of these guys, or if he's going to, you like him too.
And ball.
It sounds like he's practicing well. It sounds like, even though Javon Baker has had his ups and downs, they are still high on his potential. He was in uniform today. He does do a little bit of special teams. I just wonder if you start to see guys like that get a little bit more action because they know they need some juice. And
how much was Tyquan out there today?
He was out there. He was out there a lot. I don't know if they threw it to him one time though.
Nope. Demario Douglas drew 2 flags, but didn't have a catch. I mean, that's insanity to me. And I'm not saying it's insanity on the part of Van Pelt or Brissett or anybody, but there was a cross. Again, last week I saw the same thing. You have Demario Douglas underneath. And again, it's easy for me to say in an office on a couch. And I'm not ducking, oh boy, what's that kid's name? Mate from...
Oh, Boye Mafe.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
He had a sack on the first drive. I was like, hey, thank God that he actually did something after I talked about him all week.
So I'm not ducking, oh, boy, Mate. And it's not... I'm not trying to find... Guys, bottom line, you got to get the ball to Demario Douglas at some juncture. And what could the Patriots do? Boutte in, Baker more, Osborne out, Tyquan Thornton. If he's just going to run around and be a mannequin, get him out. Get him out. Get him out.
I think if you're KJ Osborne and you're Tyquan Thornton, you're sort of looking over your shoulder at these other younger guys. Jalen Polk, it's my understanding they still really like, and that he can win on the outside. And when they load the box, it's interesting to me, you look at the final numbers for Ramondre Stevenson, 3.9 yards per carry. I know overall as a team, the numbers looked a little bit better. You had a couple explosive runs from Antonio Gibson, and at times the run game looked fine. But 3.9 per carry, that's the other team saying, we're going to force you to do something else. Mm-hmm. And you're going to have to eventually beat us on the outside one-on-one. And the Seahawks, unfortunately for New England, are a team that has good corners, and you don't have any receivers that you feel like can make a play right now. So they need to protect, obviously, but they need to get a little bit more talent. And I think they're going to try to with some of these younger players at the receiver spot.
Could be a real difficult matchup for a couple reasons on Thursday night. We'll get into it more, but with a very savvy quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, if you see Geno do what Geno did today, put this in the hands of Aaron Rodgers trying to decipher what to do. It's not great. And meanwhile, Sauce Gardner is a step up from the guys the Patriots have seen, and that's a very good secondary. Meanwhile, Phil, if it keeps up this way, we're going to see Drake May sooner rather than later because Jacoby Brissett's going to get hurt. and he's not going to be able to go. And God willing, when he does suffer whatever malady it's going to be, it's minor enough that he's not waylaid for a big period of time. But it's coming, isn't it?
That sack that he took from Leonard Williams, where it was the bear hug from behind,
Mm-hmm.
and he sort of whipped him to the ground. I don't know if you saw this or if you noticed this, but it looked like his helmet sort of bounced off the turf, and it took him a while to get up, and he was sort of hunched over as he walked over to the side. No one came over and talked to him.
There was an ankle twist on one of them.
Okay.
There was an ankle twist as he was going down. There was a throwdown where it looked like he had the wind knocked out of him. Those were two different ones.
He took another shot to the ribs at one point, sort of got him under the right arm, and he landed hard on his left shoulder.
Yep,
you're right, Tom.
That was the air knocked out, I thought.
He took officially, according to the box score, 8 hits. So it's 3 sacks, but 8 hits. I'm with you, unfortunately, and you don't want to see anybody get hurt ever. But this is not a sustainable way of playing and keeping your quarterback on the field. So he's going to get out there. They're going to have to figure out something to be able to protect these guys better. They're going to have to generate more in terms of the quick passing game. Like, how about Pop Douglas on a receiver screen? Just like a smoke screen or a tear screen, yep. Or snap, one step, ball out. I thought the screen game for the tight ends worked well today. I'm still waiting to see the screen game to the running backs do much, Tom, unless I'm missing one, maybe to Antonio Gibson. I'm just not picturing one in my mind's eye that really hit big. And this is a team that we thought was going to really try to make that a huge part of their offense. So
are teams pressing them on the outside?
Probably,
because I would press them. They can't run past you.
You know what's funny, though, is they actually were playing them with 2 high safeties at times, is what Jacoby Brissett said after the game. And it was almost like they were tipping their pitches. He said every time we had a shot play dialed up, or almost every time we had a shot play dialed up, they were sitting back. There were 2 high safeties, which, sort of takes those plays away. And so I don't know what that is. Is that, listen, as much as we talk about Jerod Mayo as a first-time head coach, Alex Van Pelt is essentially a first-time play caller. He's done it at times, we know, in spots, right, Tom? But is there something about the way he's calling the game where teams already have a good feel for when he's going to call that deep shot down the field? That would be an interesting thing for me to find out or try.
Could Chuk Okorafor have been so disgusted at the way things are going that he fed information to the Seattle sideline? I'm joking. That didn't happen. We'll get a little Chooks in a second. A nut punch development, Phil, is that they lose the football game. But big picture, if you're a Patriots fan, you can say to yourself, you know what? They weren't going to make the playoffs anyway. At least I already know they're competent. They gave me a good, entertaining afternoon, but their draft position is not harmed in the least. So from 30,000 feet, this is a good outcome.
No moral victory. No moral victory for me today, because this was a winnable game, Tom.
No doubt. But you don't want to win too many games. You don't want to win too many games.
Well, no, I'm not for that line of thinking.
Not in September.
Win as many as you can. You're going to be just fine in terms of your draft position. If you really need to trade up for that left tackle, then go ahead and trade up for that left tackle. But try to win as many as you can now.
You don't want the act of losing. Okay. I did want to point out that unlike last year, we're not seeing those disgusting knee-buckling mistakes that Mac would make, or that someone would make, or that we saw in 2022. You lose to the Raiders because of a carnival play, or you have the game against Indianapolis, or the game against Dallas where you're just non-competitive. You're down 17-0 against Philadelphia in the opener. You're just getting your head caved in on a regular basis, and you're non-competitive. These have been 2 competitive games in 2 competitive situations. So I would venture to say the Patriots are better than they were last year. I would venture to say that the coach is getting more out of his team than Bill Belichick had been. Obligatory nod here that Bill Belichick's the greatest coach of all time. But are there second guesses to be made with the clock management at any juncture in this game? I've heard some about the end of the first half. I don't agree with it. What do you think?
Oh, I think the end of the first half is an interesting one to talk about. Because you could have, Tom, not that they should have done this, because Seattle had all their timeouts. And so I get sort of what they were trying to do, which is pick up a first down.
Let me give this.
Either see if you can,
let me give you that situation.
Or run the clock out.
It's a minute 37 left. Sorry, buddy. I saw Phil's head drop because I interrupted him. A minute.
No, it's okay. No.
A minute
Go
37
ahead.
left. 1st and 10. Patriots 8-yard line. They start off with their change-up back who hasn't played much, JaMychal Hasty. He gets a handoff. He goes 2 yards. Now there's 58 seconds left. They're starting to use some clock, but they say, shit, 2nd and 8 on our own 10. We can run it again, but they're just going to use timeouts. Why don't we try and move the ball? Incomplete to Hunter Henry. 3rd and 8, 54 seconds. Incomplete again. Almost complete, but incomplete to Hunter Henry again. They punt. Seattle takes the ball over at its own 49 after a fairly decent return. Phil, thoughts? Oh, actually a great return. Excuse me. D. Williams, 23-yard return. That's another kind of bad special teams situation there because he fielded it at his own 26 and they started at their own 49. So, Phil, talk to me.
Yeah, that's a tough one because you basically when you're at midfield, Tom, these days with these kickers, Joey Slye kicked a 64-yard field goal in warmups. I know it's warmups, but these guys make them from, Walpole now. Like everybody's kicking 60-yarders. So you need basically 10 yards to be in field goal range. And I just would look at it and say this. It came off the way it played out in real time. Seemed to me to be an unsure approach, meaning, okay, we're going to run it once and see how it goes. Okay, you got 2 yards. So you're probably, okay, now it's 2nd and 8. That's a tough down and distance. You probably should be trying to run clock at this point. And they did until they stopped. If you're going to run the clock,
if they ran it on 2nd and 8 after running clock and got stuffed again, people were going to say, what are you turtling for? They're going to use the timeouts and get the ball back. So you're damned if you do. You're damned if you.
No, but then the timeouts are gone. They're up in smoke. You can't force them to use their timeouts while you have the ball, so they can't use them when they have the ball because they ended up using them and needing them. Make their life harder once they get the ball back.
But you have a choice there. You're either going to say we're going to run into the line and acknowledge that we're definitely giving them the ball with no timeouts, or we're going to try and make a first down here so they don't get the ball at all.
Yes.
So they decided.
It felt like they started with plan A, and then they somehow, for some reason, transitioned to plan B, and that's how it came off to me. Is they were going one way, and then they said, you know what, we're actually going to chuck this thing, and then Tom, I'm fine with it if you want to throw it and go for the first down. They threw 2 out routes, which are kind of difficult to complete. And again, I know you're trying to save clock and you're trying to use the sideline, but be more decisive, I guess would be my reaction to that. And it was in real time. That's how I reacted.
I feel like that's a 53-47 argument type thing. I'm not saying you're making that, but people be up in arms. People need things to flap their arms about. Cap asked in the post game, what are we angry about? I'm like, angry? I mean, I'm not angry. Go ahead, Phil.
How about the tight end? So the timeout management I find interesting too. Again, first time head coach. So how does he do with this stuff? And let's point out, Jerod Mayo is somebody who himself has said, I'm going to be learning a lot on the fly this year. I've got a long way to go. He's said things like this, and I think this is probably some of the stuff he's talking about. Not that he would admit fault or whatever on some of these, but I look at them and I say, 12 men on defense, Tom, they call a timeout in the second half. It's early in the second half. I'll try to find it. But they had 12 men on D while the Seahawks were going hurry up. And they called timeout. And I'm sitting there thinking, this is a close game. And it's not the worst thing in the world if you get bagged 5 yards for 12 men, as opposed to losing your timeout that you might need late in the game in a close game. So that was one that I sort of flagged. They ran out of time. They were down in the red zone, and they ran out of time on a 3rd down for some reason. I was very confused.
Yeah, I wondered if they were looking for a reset and didn't get it. But nobody flipped out. Nobody flipped out about it.
So, but that's another one where it's are you getting the reset or not? And if you're not going to get it, and if you're unsure, is that on you or is that on the officials? So those were the 2 that I thought, they obviously would have benefited from having those timeouts in their pocket later in the game. I felt like he was pretty aggressive with the timeouts in the second half there, and I wonder if that'll continue.
Yeah, it's funny. So many of these, and I've been saying this for years, there are 51-49 arguments to be made, and there are 70-30 arguments to be made. And I think these are a little closer to 51-49 arguments to be made. Bill Belichick was a guy who was constantly trying to get the ball down the field at the end of the half until he stopped being that guy. and he basically would go full armadillo when Mac Jones was out there. Almost as insulting. What?
But I sort of understood that at times because
I
their
did
offense
too.
was so punchless. They couldn't do anything offensively. I'm sure he's thinking the same thing now. So that's why I'm sitting up in the press box. I'm like, your passing game stinks. It stinks.
Maybe he doesn't want them to realize that he knows it.
Why are you throwing out routes to Hunter Henry, like scramble drill out routes? Like it felt like an impossible situation. And the least they could have done was force Seattle to use their timeouts. And they opted not to. And they helped. They allowed for them to do Seattle's work for them in terms of saving them time.
Okay, it's a second guess. You can have at it. I am going to point out to you that it's gone final, of course, in Arizona, as people were wondering. It's a 41-10 win for the Cardinals over the Rams. And I think that my biggest second guess in this, Phil, is, you got over there on the sideline, Drake May picking his ass for 3 hours, and Marvin Harrison Jr., meanwhile, has 4 catches for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns before halftime. And you could have had Marvin Harrison on your team. You could have also traded for Justin Fields. You could have drafted Marvin Harrison and J.J. McCarthy. No, you couldn't have done that. But the bottom line is, I'm not second-guessing it, Drake May will be fine. But as we watch this season and we look around the National Football League, there are players like Marvin Harrison Jr., having 4-catch, 130-yard days before halftime, who were available to the Patriots. So it damn well better work out for Elliott Wolf, who figured that Chuks Okorafor would be the starting left tackle, and the only left that we have from Chuks Okorafor is left team. What the hell's going on with Chuks? Any word down there?
It just sounds like he's not convinced he needs to be playing football anymore. And so, listen, I
financially,
think,
passionately, what?
I don't know. I don't know the details, so I don't want to speculate. I hope the guy's doing okay mental health wise, because he is. I only say that, Tom, because it is an unusual situation where he is leaving a lot of money on the table, and you just don't see it from guys that. He's been in the league a fair amount of time, but it's not like he was ever one of the highest paid tackles in the league. It's not like he has made, his family generations upon generations down the line wealthy. And so, listen, if he doesn't want to play anymore, all the power to him. You don't have to play anymore.
I think the Patriots share blame in the left, in this situation. We've stated that. Elliott Wolf portrayed a guy who'd only played right tackle as a successor at left tackle. So you have a bunch of people going, oh, wow, they have a left tackle. And then he gets here, he's like, I'm not really that good at it yet. In essence, I'm not really that into this. This is really not that great for me. I don't love it. So shitty situation to be put into, but they must have at some point mentioned to him as they sat across the table, we might try you at left tackle. Be that as it may, folks are young. As much as we look at them as professional athletes, they're guys who are in their 20s still in many cases and trying to figure stuff out. Let's get to Stock Up and Stock Down. It's a weekly production of Phil Perry and I on the Aftermath podcast. I'll go first, Phil, with some Stock Up activity. I'm going to start with Hunter Henry, the tight end. He ended training camp with a bit of an injury, lower body injury, but he has, in the 2 weeks that he's been out there and available, played really well and been a staple of the Patriots offense. So Hunter Henry, to me, gets one of my stock ups. You, Philly?
I'll go with Keon White as a stock up. I thought he really created the first sack of the game for the Patriots early in that game by beating Laken Tomlinson just straight off the snap and getting into the backfield, getting his hands on Geno Smith actually before others took him down, and then ended up blowing up a play later in the game as well. So this guy is going to be pretty consistent force. If he's on pace for, multiple tackles for loss a game, he's going to have a hell of a season. So he's stock up for me.
It's easy picking sometimes with the stock up. So let's move over to stock down and let's put the where the rubber meets the road. Let's get down to brass tacks. Okay, let's call it like we see it, Phil. Stock down for me. I'm going stock down for Austin Hooper. You can't have a guy just turnstile you and block a kick at a critical juncture like that. If you're confused, find a way to get a timeout, something. once they show what they show, because you are rolling dice. And I'm going to give a minor stock down to Jacoby Brissett on the sack that he took prior to that.
You know what's interesting about that play, Tom, is at the time, I said to myself, that's not the worst play in the world. And I think I've just been scarred by Patriots offense over the course of the last couple of years, where you see a quarterback in a bad situation force a throw that ends up getting returned for a touchdown. So I'm like, yeah, you know what? Hold on to that thing. It's a 48-yard field goal.
Right.
It would have been a 39-yarder, so that's a little bit easier. But it's still a 48-yarder. That's a completely makeable field goal. I actually didn't hate the decision by him to take the sack there. And I know it looks like a big play now, but I have to admit, I did not feel that way in the moment. And again, it might be because of the type of football that we've watched over the last couple of years. Can I ask you a question really quickly? Do you feel like it's stocked down for the chances of Drake May playing anytime soon? Because I feel like even though the offense looks the way it does, with the offensive line performing the way it has and the receivers doing nothing, is there anybody out there right now who's clamoring for Drake May? There might be, but I don't think I'm one of them.
No, especially giving the astounding nimbleness and dexterity of one Jacoby Brissett at the moment. He is moving with the dexterity of a lizard. Hat tip to Felix Unger there. I think, too, we already alluded to it, though. Drake May will be playing football for the Patriots sooner rather than later because they have not stocked the team appropriately despite Elliott Wolf's. Phil's got the golden hour going on down there, it looks like, at Gillette Stadium. For those of you watching on YouTube, yeah, illuminated. Do you have another stock down for me, fella?
Yeah, let's give it a Kyle Duggar. I mean, that's the play that, changed the game. And so I give him all the credit in the world for owning up to it. But if that was his mistake, he got his eyes sort of caught in the backfield, didn't get the proper read on the quarterback, then we got to put him in the stock down category, even if he is one of their best players. And he had the turnover on downs play. One of the best plays defensively for them, but also the worst.
All right. Meanwhile, stock up. I'm going to have to give it to Antonio Gibson. I told you, that he would be a critical back for the Patriots. Now, I'm not really breaking new ground out there. He's been a talented back in the past for Washington, but people might have forgotten the fact that he was on their roster because you didn't see him a lot. But he's a pass catcher, and he is a very elusive running back. No receptions today. No, one reception for 7 yards for Gibby, but that run that he had, the 45-yarder, was electric.
I was calling him Crazy Legs Gibson up in the press box. I mean, that guy's legs are going a million miles an hour, and he is high stepping and spinning. I mean, the spin moves. I don't know how many carries he had, but let's look it up. He must have had at least one.
He had 11 for 96.
Oof, 11. What a day. It felt like he averaged at least one spin move per carry. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, Chuck Foreman would have brought a tear to his eye. Again, another hat tip to somebody from the 70s, like Felix Unger. Phil, I think we can put a cork in this one. We've done our stock up. We've done our stock down. We have a short week, so we're going to be back at it again on Tuesday. Real quick turnaround as we preview the Jets and the Patriots and get into it for Thursday Night Football. Really interesting game. Through 2 games of the Jerod Mayo, Drake May, Jacoby Brissett era, I find this team kind of fascinating. You?
It is. It's an interesting team. It was an entertaining game, and I think there's so much new for us to absorb. I'm finding it to be a lot of fun.
All right, great. Folks, I hope your absorption's going well this evening too. And just another bad dismount by me. Goodbye.